I believe that a lot of entrepreneurs are liars. When you look behind closed doors, you see the reality. They're really good at lying, not to the people around them, but most importantly to themselves.
As a leader of your company, it's not your job to cater for Phoenix. Your job is to drive results and drive revenue.
Clients that come to work with you, after 12 weeks, they come out and their business is completely changed. The way that they live is completely different because you've seen things that they've been putting a blind eye to.
Every failing company has one thing in common. Leaders who protect comfort over the truth.
If I'm a 7, 8, 9-figure entrepreneur, how do I actually implement what we're talking about here? Welcome back to another episode of Central COO. We're not co as in co, but co as in
COO. Welcome back to another episode, guys.
Hope you guys enjoyed the last episode. This one's about to be another banger, inshallah ta'ala. But this time I'm not for fighting Fawaz. I'm fighting you guys today, okay? I'm fighting the CEOs because there's a very heavy aspect that they keep ignoring, and it's very uncomfortable, and that's honesty, okay? Because I believe that a lot of entrepreneurs are liars, okay? And just bear with me what I mean by that, inshallah ta'ala, okay? But a lot of entrepreneurs, they value comfort, they value, they're talking about radical transparency on their Instagram and their LinkedIns and all these different things. But reality is when you look behind closed doors, you see the reality, right? And obviously we've worked with so many entrepreneurs at this point that we see the reality of how they're running their businesses. And there's a lot of escapism. There's a lot of truth that they're hiding, okay, that they're not exposing within their teams and the outside world, of course, okay? And what's ironic is that we found that majority of the time, the smarter the founder, the better the lies, okay? They're really good at lying, not to the people around them, but most importantly to themselves, okay, that they're perfect, that everything is going amazing, when they just don't do enough analysis to see, okay, well, there's a deeper problem here. We've seen this all the time, right? Entrepreneurs are coming in that used to be absolute killers, right? And they reach a stage where, look, their business has reached a level of substantial. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Something that you can say, okay, wow, he's actually built something which is big here. But growing it to the next stage has been so difficult for them. And a lot of the time it's because there's all these different interferences. There's all these different things that either he's put a blind eye to or he's just, maybe it's difficult conversation. It's something that they haven't been brutally honest with themselves about. And they've put on, you can say, some sort of, would you say a facade or some sort of excuse that's actually believable even to themselves, right? So what does that normally look like? Why is that so important for them to be brutally honest to themselves?
In order for a company to be able to grow and scale, the entrepreneur, the founder, has to be a great storyteller. He has to be an absolutely incredible storyteller. He has to be able to tell the story of a brand before it's anything so it becomes something. And that same ability to tell ourselves stories is a good thing. It's our greatest strength, and at the same time, it can be our greatest weakness. Because sure, telling the story of the company is good when it's time to convince, when it's time to raise capital, but when it's time to actually face some truths and improve your company, those lies that you've told yourself and that storytelling ability now becomes something that is damaging you. See, every entrepreneur wants to win. Every human being wants to win. But the truth is majority will never make it. And it's not because they're smart. It's not because they lack opportunity. It's because they refuse to be brutally just honest with themselves. And the truth is, and this is something we've realized and something I always talk to my clients about, whenever you're stuck, and we've been stuck many times, even in our businesses, right? Even within a figure that we can't seem to scale past, there is a truth that you're not accepting. And until you start to accept that truth, nothing will change. No matter what you try, run more ads, sure. More marketing, sure. Bring in X, Y, Z. Until you accept certain truths, nothing grows past, nothing will scale.
And how does a person realize that because if you're saying that there is something, but how does a person realize what that thing even is?
What I always tell people is, like we said, it's all about looking at things objectively, right? Looking at things in a way that removes emotions, right? And what is the best way to do that? The best way to do that is through the numbers, right? And one of the things, for example, I love, you can have your feelings about performance, or even one of the things we've dropped with clients is what the KTN framework, the knife to neck. You can have how you feel about somebody, right? But what does the number say? What is the number beside that person's name? You're, as a CEO, the metrics you're in charge of, what is the number beside your name? What metric are you responsible for? Because the truth is, no matter what way you look at it, we can make excuses and we can say, but there's this variable and that variable. We just have to be brutally honest sometimes. Is this person the right seat? Am I taking care of the variables I'm supposed to take care of? Is there a lack of performance? What is going on? How do we just actually pull out? And this is one of the things that I love to do. And I really advise for all entrepreneurs, especially when I want to go through a phase of like real honesty of myself. I pull myself out of the company. I'll actually get away from my team. I refuse to speak to my team. I refuse to speak to anyone. And I have 2-3 days of little to zero stimulation where you get rid of everything and you actually ask yourself, like, what is going on with the company? Like, what is happening? Where am I lacking? Where am I lying to myself? What are some elephants that I'm dragging around that I should just let go of fast? What are certain things maybe I'm doing just because I don't want to hurt people or because I'm conscious of other people's feelings? Or what are some truths that I don't want to accept because I'm scared of how it's going to negatively affect somebody's situation, etc.? Because as a CEO, as a leader of your company, it's not your job to cater for feelings, right? And this is the hard truth that no one talks about. It's not your job to, make sure there's this, beautiful look on the company on the outside. Your job is to drive results and drive revenue, right? And sometimes you're going to have to do things that quite fundamentally everybody else in the room is upset with you, but you have to also remember nobody else in the room has the view, has the perspective that you have. So sometimes you have to make tough decisions.
Okay, but why do you think that most entrepreneurs don't even, think about these difficult decisions? It doesn't even cross their mind.
It's easier to lie to yourself and say everything is fine, right? We were told to tell ourselves everything is fine. No, everything is not fine, right? For example, a company that makes 50K per month, but ends the month on zero, in my eyes, it's a company that doesn't make money. It fundamentally hasn't fulfilled its purpose. The job of a business is to make profit, meaning something is broken. Be brutally honest, right? Okay, you're trying to scale, etc. Every time something happens, I'll give you an example in our company, right?
No.
There was a stage where, again, constantly the turnover is just crazy. People come in, they go. People come in, they go. And sure, you can lie to yourself and tell yourself, turnover is terrible. The labor market is horrible. And these are lies you tell yourself as entrepreneurs. It's lies I told myself as well.
Right.
Or you can turn around and be like, yeah, I'm just a terrible leader, right? I have not built something that makes people want to follow and stay. And if that is the case, then you need to actually be brutally honest with yourself. Okay, there's things I need to change in my leadership. And the beautiful thing is when you're brutally honest with yourself, you decide to actually face the facts, then you can change things, right? I can't tell you how many people I meet and how many people I sit down and speak to. And the fundamental underlying problem is they just can't admit. They just can't be brutally honest with themselves. And you will never progress in life.
Tamam, inshallah. And if you can give us, for example, a practical example of, from some of the clients that you've worked with, that there was something that was holding them back because of a decision, or they just weren't being brutally honest, whether that's to themselves or to someone on their team, that if they continue with that would have destroyed their business, or a situation where they actually did end up fixing the problem and it brought their business to the next stage.
I always tell clients, like, sure, I believe you. I'm not saying you're a liar.
No.
I'm just saying I believe that you believe you're telling the truth. Do I believe it to be the truth? That's something else. But I believe that you believe you're telling the truth. I don't see you as a liar and I don't think you're lying. There's a difference. If from my perspective, where I'm saying I believe that lamp over there to be blue, I'm not lying. I'm telling the truth. That's what I can see. That's based off of my understanding. It's blue, right? But brutally honest means forget what you see, what is actually there. And that's the job of audits. That's the job of numbers. That's the job of metrics, of your mentor, your coach, to actually guide you and show you, no, this is actually what's there. So the situation with him is we're looking at a CEO and, we're looking at his time audit, and we're looking at a CEO who had became a wife, right? He goes, I'm helping my wife. I goes, no, you are your wife. You are the woman. You're the wife of the relationship. You're waking the kid up. You're giving the kid breakfast. You're doing this for the kid. You're doing that for the kid. And prior, we had another situation like this with an entrepreneur as well. Now, obviously, I understand it's a touchy subject for any man, right? His home and how his family dynamics, etc. Yeah. But I don't give a rat's. If you paid me to, be your coach and be honest with you, I'm going to tell you exactly how it is, right? In a nice, kind respect, maybe not nice, but in a kind, respectful way, I'll give it to you. Right. And you can choose that, and they always do. And this is when you can sense that the ego is there. They will straight away, without thinking or without considering the words that just came out of your mouth, they'll rebut. Oh, you don't understand. Or one day when you're in my situation, you'll get it. Like, sure. Or just have a conversation with your wife. Or just have a conversation with your wife. Can't do deep work sessions. Can't get anything done fundamentally. Why? Because I have 2 kids. You're the only CEO of 2 kids. 2. You're the only CEO of 2 kids. Okay, perfect. So maybe have a conversation with your wife like, I need you to take on more hair. I know it's tough for you, but I can't do this. Why? Because I have an XYZ situation and this is negatively affecting my business. One of the things and aspects of being brutally honest, your role as a man fundamentally is to bring cash into the household, right? That's fundamentally a man's job. The job, if you look at it deeper as a woman, is to what? Take care of the household, right? Yeah. Now, when you start to dive, I'm not saying you can't help each other in each other's roles, but when you start to dive far into the other person's role, you can't do your role well, which causes more mashakil, which is what happened with him. Alhamdulillah, he realized, he sends me a voice note like, oh my God, I had the conversation, things are better. I was finally able to get a deep work session in, I'm making progress. Oh yeah, that's what happens when you face the truth.
The thing is, right, I think the difficult part of this, what we're talking about here, it sounds amazing, theoretically speaking. But the biggest issue is that we see entrepreneurs not being able to see these things because there's no one to tell them either. And once you're the guy, right, like, and anyone that's listening to this, it's a 7-8 figure entrepreneur, they know what it's like. Like, honestly, the people around you are bootlicking. That's essentially the truth. So they're not gonna tell you the reality, right? But how many times have you seen that this is the biggest thing that actually kills a person because no one is there to tell them the reality of the situation?
I think one thing you have to understand is when you've built your identity around the image of success rather than the pursuit of it, it's much harder to be honest with yourself.
No.
When you see yourself as successful and a great human being, rather than I'm on the path to becoming successful, etc., then it starts to feel like admitting to failure, admitting something isn't good enough. It's like this attack, this weakness, and this something you have to protect. That's not the truth, right? At every level, there's new devils, and admitting that sometimes things aren't going the way you want them to go is the first step of growth. And sure, you can lie to yourself and tell yourself, no, that I don't really think that's an issue, etc. But what do the numbers say? So what entrepreneurs need to understand is it takes perspective to fully be honest, right? You have to be able to see things from multiple views. It's hard to be brutally honest when you're not brutally informed.
Okay.
If you're not brutally informed, how can you be brutally honest? You don't know.
Right.
So how can you be honest if you don't know?
So are you saying that the biggest problem with the entrepreneurs is that they just don't know?
They're misinformed. They have an opinion on something without looking at it from multiple variables and perspectives. So they believe that to be the truth.
Okay, I want to understand this because obviously you have Live by Design, right? Where you're helping entrepreneurs design out their whole lives. And the main equation you go by is that performance is equal to potential minus interferences. So you're actually saying that a part of this equation is that people don't even want to accept that interference is an interference.
Yeah, of course. When you can't accept something, like it's like entrepreneurs, I see them like using their phone for hours. They're like, it's business. Be brutally honest with yourself. Like, what business is done on an 8-hour screen time? Like, what are you doing? What business is being conducted on 8 hours of screen time? Or in social media's market research? Yeah, sure, buddy, market research, right? You scrolling through Instagram and YouTube for ages is inspiration. It's you gaining more knowledge. It's you developing your CEO abilities. And then at the end, I asked them, what did you learn after that scrolling session? So what are you going to implement after that scrolling? Be brutally honest. Look, one of the things I love, right? Sometimes I sit down with myself and like, Fawaz, you just lagged this week. Like fundamentally, you've just been subpar. Just accept it. Don't give me a reason. Sometimes just accept. That's the best thing you can do, because when you accept something, now you have to change it. Now you can change it. But if you're still living in denial, well, then you don't need to change anything. Sure, there's nothing to change.
Okay, being honest with you, right now my ego is boiling from what you're saying, because I can think of 100 different things that I know that, like, if I'm being honest with myself, I know I'm avoiding. I know I shouldn't be doing. But how does a person, like, because ego, I'm like, what I'm trying to say?
Ego is the enemy.
But how does one remove that though? Because if I've been doing something for a certain type of way for like 20 years plus in a business.
I just, when people come with this ego thing, I ask them a question. What do you prefer, success or the idea of it? The image of it? Simple. If you really want to be successful, strip away your ego. If you prefer to look successful, you do whatever you want. I don't care.
But like, look, what you're talking about here, you're talking about some robot, right? That comes in, logic, like a blue, right? And we can talk about the colors in a second. But someone that's very direct, someone this is exactly what needs to get done, logic. But human beings aren't just purely one-sided. They're not purely task-oriented. There's also relationships, there's emotions, there's consequences. It's not as simple as get this done, cut this off, add this in. If business was as simple as that, then everyone would be successful in it.
Even within looking at things objectively, there's considering situations. Like, for example, a staff member that's underperforming due to the fact that he has maybe a family situation. That's objective. You're looking at it objectively. You've taken all the variables, all the truth. You assess the data. How is his performance prior to this situation?
No.
Okay, clearly this is what's affecting his performance, right? But for you to give constant excuses for a guy who's never performed nothing and to say, yeah, but this is why. Yeah, sure. How long? Like, I want everyone to understand something, right? When you admit a truth, it forces you to act on it. And that's why people don't like to accept truth, because it forces action.
No.
When you're in denial, you can delay, right? Denial causes delay. You don't need to do anything because I don't think that's the problem. So you constantly delay. When you admit something, it's hard not to do something about it. It forces you to act. And that's why I tell people, Methalan, I finally accept that, you know what, I've had this guy in the company in a seat that he doesn't belong in. And the metrics tell me he doesn't belong in. Every day after that, my chest is going to eat me alive until I make the decision to let him go.
Right.
And that's why people would just rather lie. It's easier to lie to yourself, right? Many entrepreneurs, they secretly love drama. They love firefighting. They love the stress, the busyness. It hides the emptiness of not being able to do deep work.
No. If you look at the way you deal with your clients, Allah Mubarak, you got insight. You have got very deep insight. Anyone that
From
knows
Allah's
you,
fadl.
from Allah's fadl, of course, no one else. From Allah's fadl, and of course from your after that, your hard work. Walakin, what I mean by that is you have so much insight in what exactly needs to be changed in a person's life, right? Get this done, get this done, get this done, get this done. But it's extremely difficult for a person to see that themselves, right? And that's probably why, again, from my perspective, why the clients that come to work with you, after 12 weeks, they come out and their business is completely changed. The way that they live is completely different because just purely you've seen things that they've been putting a blind eye to. So how important is it to have a coach? Because I mean, obviously, like regardless of whatever industry you're in, you need someone that gives you the other perspective. But why is that so important to have someone else that gives you the truth?
I think it's worth understanding that the thing that changed my life was somebody being brutally honest with me
No.
and forcing me to be brutally honest. Is that perhaps what gave birth to this? Is that perhaps maybe why I am where I am today? Maybe. But I do remember a very important situation, a very important time in my life where, you know, my brother just after constantly lying to myself and failing to accept accountability, my brother looked at me, he goes, you know what, khalas, you don't even need to give an excuse. Khalas, we know. It's not your fault. It's never your fault. Just save it. And I think from that day, I actually thought to myself and I accepted that, you know, for the first time I questioned and I said this crazy statement. This statement to me, it was Alim back then. You know, it's something massive.
Right.
Was perhaps I am the problem. And in just putting the word perhaps, in just even questioning, I'm not even telling you I came to the conclusion yet that I was or wasn't. Just from even asking myself that question, clarity was unlocked.
No.
And it forced me to assess the weaknesses and the faults of myself. And my life changed right there. Honestly, being brutally honest has changed every single part of my life, from relationships, my relationship with Allah, times even as a human, as your relationship with Allah and His abd, sometimes you're deceiving yourself. Sometimes you're telling yourself, oh, the reason I'm at this level is because of this, and because I don't have this, and I haven't made this decision because of this, and I haven't reached this level of iman because of this. Well, you're just lying to yourself. The reason you haven't done that is because you just haven't. You're the fundamental issue. It's things you're not ready to do. There's things you're not ready to drop. Don't say, I would be a better if I made hijrah, or if, right? Just accept the brutal truth. And that's where, if I was a viewer right now, I would literally sit down with a pen and a paper and I would ask myself, where am I lying to myself right now? What am I pretending to not know? Sometimes, and I'm telling you, like, one of the things that's absolutely changed my life is just being honest with myself, and then furthermore, being honest with people. Like, don't get it twisted. I'm not telling you I don't get stick for it. I'm not telling you, like, people don't absolutely hate my guts sometimes. But I'm sure at the end of the day, they can look at me and be like, you know what, I appreciate the fact that I was honest.
That within itself is a big problem, because you don't want to be that guy that's just bam, 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 24/7. It's just like, bro, this guy's just, leave me alone.
Do you need to be though?
If you're talking about brutal honesty.
That's brutal honesty is me and you versus the problem. It's not me versus you,
Okay.
right? It's me and you against this problem. Like, let's be brutally honest here.
Yeah.
You are underperforming.
Right.
Like, one of the things I think people need to consider today is, like, especially as a man, guys, you know, I'll make the excuse when women are very emotional creatures, etc. As a man, you actually have to get really good in just accepting feedback, accepting honesty, accepting even when it looks like somebody's like smashing with the truth. If it's the haqq, it's the haqq. Sure, hate it, be bothered by it, but just fundamentally, that's why sometimes I ask, you know, team or client, like, am I telling the truth or not? Forget my delivery, right? I'm not saying delivery isn't important, by the way,
No.
right? But forget delivery for this moment in time.
Sahih.
Am I telling you the truth or not? Okay, so forgive me for my terrible delivery and please just accept the truth. My delivery is terrible, sir. Okay, forgive me. I accept. I'm being honest, brutally honest with myself. My delivery is trash.
No.
But am I lying? Was I wrong?
I think it goes back to even the ego side of things within Islam, which is obviously you should be able to take the truth even if it comes from your enemy.
100%.
You know, I think there's a prerequisite here, right, that we've actually just kind of topped over, but it's actually something which is extremely important, and it's the foundation to all of this, which is reflection, consciousness, awareness.
Of course. And noise stops you from being. That's what I said. Like, there's a lot of people that aren't lying to themselves. They just don't know the truth.
No.
He's not lying. He's just telling his truth.
Because I've watched a couple of our CEO with the CEO podcast with some of the clients that took Live by Design. And I think maybe like 2 or 3 of them said the same thing about, for example, some of the journaling exercises, reflection questions. They were like, to be honest with you, I'll be completely honest with you. When I saw them, I was doing it just because you told me to do it. I thought it was a bit of fluff. You know, I'm trying to say, just answer a couple of questions. But the clarity that came after it, because it's questions that no one asks themselves.
I think you just need to create structure that reinforces honesty. Things like data, feedbacks, time and solitude, mentorship. These are all things that allow you to become what? More, like, for example, when I look at my CEO dashboard, it doesn't matter how I feel about the week. He's the figure what it's supposed to be or not.
Right.
Fundamentally, if everyone's figure is under or over, like, that's just the objective truth. Forget how I feel.
Yeah.
Right? And this is why as well, we always talk about the concept of contribution, not effort.
No.
Effort, it's hard to judge that as true or false. We can judge contribution, though. We can judge the result, output.
No.
Right? So things like data, right? Tracking things, feedback, inviting criticism, right? Solitude, having periods where you actually spend time alone and thinking in silence, and things like mentorship, finding someone who can actually expose the truth to you. These are all things that are going to be very, very important, right? You know, one of my favorite sayings of Umar bin Khattab is hold yourself to account before you're held to account. And I genuinely believe it is one of the most misunderstood, or it's not given, it's never given its haqq when people actually make this statement. They say it in a way like, oh, fix up, hold yourself to account. What this means is to actually sit down and account.
No.
When you look at financial records, etc., when someone is accounting them, they're accounting every euro, every pound. Where did it go? Where did the dollar go? Everything is accounted for.
No.
It's taken into what? Into account.
Now that you mentioned that, I want to understand something, because when we're talking about living by design, design means intentionality. Okay. And you design a lot of things when a client comes in, obviously, business, structure of this and that, in times of time as well, their calendar. So when you're talking about reflection, if it's something that has to be done, it must mean that you incorporate within your time quite frequently, right? So when you're building out a design, for example, like, how do you make sure that you are constantly in reflection, constantly giving yourself the hard truth, constantly brutally honest?
I do believe in structured time where you just reflect and do tadabbur and tafakkur over your actions, how things are in your life are going. And just to clarify, every time I do one of these sessions with myself, wallahi, I've never left the same person.
And how frequently do you do them?
You can do them there's mini ones, okay? There's the mini ones you'll do on a daily basis. But for me, like a deep audit, self-audit, I do that every week. A day where I just sit down, it tends to be for me Friday, and I just assess everything that's going on. You have your self-audit, you can have your company audit. This is time to actually sit down, stop. Actually, what's going on? What's been lacking this week? How are the different metrics of my life? How are they down? How are they up? What caused them to go down and up? What are the patterns? Let me be honest with myself. Although I love this person, every time I'm with them, I leave angry. Khalas. That's a brutal, sometimes just after reflecting, you come to that what? Brutal flex, you know? Peter Drucker, he mentions in his book, you can't improve. You can't manage things that can't be measured. I like to measure everything. My deen, there's a way to measure it. Whether you like it or not, there is a way to measure it. Every single thing, your health, there's a way to measure it. All right? When you can't measure something, you can't manage it. You know, I had one of my clients, he's actually very beloved to me. I was speaking to him yesterday and he said something quite funny. He goes, I was reviewing the initial audit I'd done and I was lying. He goes, I gave myself all these 5s and these 6s and high scores. And he goes, I'm nowhere near any of those things. And just from the deeper questions you start to ask me, I realized like, I'm not who I thought I was. Do you know how much of a great, like liberating feeling it is when you actually connect the dot between who you actually are and who you see yourself as? Do you know how liberating, like how freeing that is when you actually strip away the noise, strip away all the lies you tell yourself and people tell you and you're like, okay, snap, so this is who I am. You must confront the brutal facts, but don't lose faith. It's a saying from good to great. Jim Collins, he mentions in the book, you must confront the brutal facts, but don't lose faith. All because something is bad doesn't mean you should lose faith and you should mope and cry about it, but you still have to face that fact. Every failing company has one thing in common. Yeah. Leaders who protect comfort over the truth.
There's something that you said there, right? Which is, I think it's difficult to think about, okay, that, you know, I'm the one with the fault. And because again, there's so many things that paint a picture that I am this perfect guy. And that's probably why even the client you're talking about took a while to come to that realization. But just think of it logically speaking, right? You are coming here and saying that I've got so much potential, I've got so much I can accomplish. So why aren't you there yet? Why haven't you reached the figures and the vision that you're trying to build? Why haven't you reached it yet? There must be something that's interfering, right? So if that's the case, then there must be something you're not doing, but you just haven't accepted it. So if you just remove your ego for a second, what happens? You start to see the reality. You start to see that, okay, you know what? If I just change this. And I think we found a lot of the time with entrepreneurs, there's probably like 3 to 5 decisions. 3 to 5 decisions that could 10x their business. Yeah. But there's just so much heavy weight on it that they don't get to that point.
Sometimes when you're doing something scary,
right,
it can be tough. All right. And this is one of the things that's so important for our clients, where the fact that we're with them through a tough decision or through a brutally, and you know, sometimes you just need someone to tell you it's not going to be as bad as you think. Like it genuinely isn't going to be that crazy thing that you're scared to do, that truth that you're scared to confront. It's not going to be as bad as you think.
Mm. Okay, so you've said this a couple of times, right? You said truth before growth. Okay, can you break that down to us? Because to be honest with you, every founder thinks they're being honest. Okay, they think they're being honest with themselves. I reflect quite a bit. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Quarterly, weekly, monthly. I'm tracking some of my metrics. I'm tracking my ads. You know, I get on meetings with my team. You know, all these different things. So, what kind of truth are we talking about that we're missing out on that just keeps us stuck?
Yeah, طيب. Look. The reality is scaling can only occur when you're brutally honest, when you face reality. Oh. And like I said, you know, it's so refreshing for me to talk about these things on the podcast and to work with clients, because like I literally see this day to day in our own companies, truths that I haven't accepted yet, things that I'm delaying. Every time the company has a period of scale, or where significant growth happens, I made a tough decision. So now anytime I want to scale, the first thing I always ask myself is what fact do I actually need to face, all right? You need to stop lying about results, stop lying about team performance, energy levels. What fact do I need to face? Always first, myself as a CEO. It's the first certain things I need to face. The point is you start to look at things objectively, you face the facts, you stop lying about results, all right? And then you're going to raise your floor. You have to raise the standard. Okay, well, you know what? The truth is, in order to scale this company, I need every employee to be bringing in minimum 10K per month in terms of revenue per employee. That's the only way this is going to scale to where I want it to. Anyone who's under that line, you fire them. And it's tough, but what you tolerate defines your ceiling. Your ceiling is that goal you want. It's your highest. It's that range where you can get to, the highest level you can achieve.
Right.
What you tolerate, your floor will also determine your ceiling. So for example, if I make it a new standard in the company that this is what each, for example, closer must bring. If he doesn't bring it, he's gone. Well, that's the only way to increase the ceiling as well. Right? And there's many times where you're going to have to do this. It's tough, but that's the only way. In order to increase your ceiling first, you have to, what? You have to raise your floor. And then you focus on that single thing, that great enemy, that single thing that is what? Stopping you, that is choking you from scaling. Right?
Yeah.
That's the thing you attack. You identify what is it, that single constraint that if I just did right now. Sometimes it could be a person, it could be a decision, a company, it could be an offer, etc. Hold faith in your success while facing the brutal truth.
I think obviously with every business we've found that there's always this one disgusting, ugly monster of a problem that no one wants to address. That everyone just keeps pushing to the side. No one wants to actually address. But it's the one thing that they keep escaping. Okay. And that's why even when I'm on the calls with these guys, they're coming to me and they're telling me, yeah, it's just need a marketing issue. I need to increase my ad spend. I need cash flow. I need investors. I need this. All operational problems, logistical problems. But the reality is they don't come back and say, you know what? Maybe I'm the issue. That word that you said, probably. You never really hear them using it. Just switch the perspective for 1 second and see, look, maybe I'm the issue. Maybe I need to fix this thing that I've been avoiding for the longest time. Because there's no one else that has more authority in your business than you, right? So if you don't go ahead and force that opinion or force that decision to be made, then how will the business get to the next stage?
One thing you have to accept is naturally the role of a leader in any way, shape, or form, be it the leader of a household, the leader of an organization, you have to make tough decisions. You're going to have to make tough decisions, and you can only make tough decisions by coming first to brutal truths, like accepting crazy truths. And tough decisions aren't popular. They've never been. And you still have to make the decisions because those things a lot of the times are holding you back. There's going to be times, right? And this is the natural process, right? Especially when we deal with clients all the time where it's like, no, but the team and etc. Look, no one has to always understand what you do, all right? Looking for acceptance and agreement from everyone before you make a certain move in business is the very reason why you're going to be unable to scale, because people can't always give you the acceptance you need. Some days you're going to make a decision and everybody believes it's wrong, but you have to also understand that you have perspective that no one else has. And that's the truth.
So we've been talking about truth before growth, raising your floor, and all these different amazing, beautiful concepts. Okay. But again, let's be real. Like, we're talking about these things, but at the same time, these guys' calendars are packed. They've got so many responsibilities, teams waiting for answers, payroll, clients expecting updates, etc. They don't really have that bandwidth to implement another one of these theories. So look, if I'm a 7, 8, 9-figure entrepreneur that's listening to this, how do I actually implement what we're talking about here? How do I actually make honesty a part of the system and not just a slogan? Because we have a lot of these entrepreneurs that come in and put radical transparency and we're all about the truth, or whatever. But how do we actually implement this and design for the truth?
Yeah, that's a crucial question. You have to design for truth, not just speak it. So one of the ways we do this, alhamdulillah, from Allah's fadl, in the Live by Design program with our clients is there are 4 practical steps and kind of a system we have that allows them to actually allow for honesty inside a company, right? Number 1 is the weekly truth check. Okay, so every Friday before Jum'ah, well, we do it on Sundays personally, I sit with my team. Or if I'm alone, of course, you sit with myself and you ask yourself, what's not working, right? Why am I pretending not to see? And what will break if I don't fix it this week, right? This is an venting session. It's meant to be structured. It builds that intellectual humility. Like, I can actually clearly see where the issue's coming from. When a founder practices this level of reflection weekly, they become more accurate, less emotional, and far more respected by the team. And again, just to clarify, the whole notion of things being loved a decision being popular, I believe that's irrelevant as a leader. You're not always going to come to popular decisions, right? Yeah. People aren't always going to like your decision making, and that's fine. The second people lose trust in leadership, they should no longer be underneath that leader. This is my fundamental principle. If you believe that you are in a better position to run the company than that current person, leave his company. It makes no logical sense for you to stay under him. By you working under someone, you still believe that this person is in the best position to drive this company forward. Yeah. The second you lose that belief, execute a team member. The second they lose or they start to believe, no, this is the best. Okay, perfect. All right, it makes no sense. So you have to be able to have that full reflection by everyone in the team. Assess it, taking their opinions, taking things that they're saying, etc. But one of the things that I always like to do on these sessions is you want to ideally structure it. You don't want people to just like a free-for-all, because then feedback becomes complaining, all right? It's like, okay, so what's the solution that is attached to this reflection of yours?
How do you make sure that it doesn't turn into that negativity you're talking about, where it's just like, you know, there's this, we need to fix this. How do you actually go? Because you're talking about deeper things. There's obviously surface level. Oh, we can fix this. We can add this. How do you know it? How do you actually make something deep? Especially when it's not from yourself.
Behind every statement, I will ask a question, right? I believe this right now is the way I really believe this in my team. Sometimes, and I'm glad this has been the case and this has been a culture I've been able to build. I get staff coming to me, all right? Team members coming to me about other team members, and they're like, Fawaz, look, I have nothing against the guy. I just don't believe he's in the best position to run this. Or another guy will come to me like, this guy's in the best position to run this, or this guy's underperforming, it's kind of holding up everything for us. And that is a culture you must build in the company. Now, do I believe any one of them do it out of spite, out of jealousy, envy? Wallahi, I can guarantee wholeheartedly none of them do, right? But when you build an organization that let's put like in a way where you build a culture, like let's all put our feelings aside and ask ourselves, what is the truth here, right? Who is doing what they're supposed to do? Who isn't doing what they're supposed to do?
So I get what you mean now when you say this is a form of design within a company itself, because you've actually created an environment to allow this to be to take place even without you being there.
And it starts with the head, right? Literally, there's times I will literally ask each team member, so where do you feel like I'm going wrong? No. Or where do you feel like something I haven't exposed? If you were in my shoes, what would you do? How do you feel about it? So when they feel like, whoa, I can be transparent with him, so what is it to be transparent with anyone else?
No. And that's it, really. It's just kind of more so having these systems in place that allows brutal honesty. Okay. Yeah. And you, of course, even as a CEO, you have to remove the ego, especially when it comes from those under you. Okay. Because again, you're leading them. So they're going to be able to tell you, like, how do they feel under your leadership? It's like at the same time you said that, okay, yeah, if someone's working under a leader and they don't, respect their leadership, but how do you know that? If no one has ever come up to tell you that, you know what, Sheikh Fawaz, I don't like how you're doing this. I don't like, if you haven't opened up those doors, no one's going to say anything.
100%. You're going to have to make feedback a culture in the company. No. But this is why it's important to bring people, especially in leadership positions in a company. You want people who can actually come with an educated decision, right? With an educated opinion, and back, of course, that opinion, and then shift the whole realm of the company, right? And this is where, especially like one of the things you're going to have to do as a CEO is rate the level of people's feedback. It's one thing I do, and it's subconsciously. I was like, I know, yeah, perfect. I should take feedback from this guy with a pinch of salt. He doesn't have perspective on X, Y, Z, right? Or this guy, he can give me great perspective on his role, but that's probably all as much as he can do. You have to know when everyone's talent starts and stops. Does that make sense? Brutal honesty is the only way to live. To be brutally honest with yourself and to be brutally honest with others.
Okay, so look, if you're a Muslim entrepreneur doing more than 50K per month, then book a call below with a member of our team, and we're going to show you how you can actually be brutally honest with yourself. Okay, brutally honest with yourself, brutally honest with your life, your team, your business, and everything. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. So you can actually start to live by design and actually scale your business without burnout.
If you're a Muslim entrepreneur doing over 100K a month, you cannot scale using the same system that got you to where you are now. You need to upgrade yourself as a founder. This is the exact same thing we've done for all our clients, and they've been able to 3 all the way to 10x in revenue. So if you would like us to do the same thing for you, then click the link in the description down below now.